Hello and welcome to the Classic Car Weekly podcast, the sibling podcast to the popular weekly title. I'm this week's host, Jesse Billington, and I'm joined by our deputy editor, Chris Hope, here in CCWHQ, as we promised.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's a nice, warm, sunny day. In fact, it's very warm in the
It's
office
great,
today.
isn't it? Yeah, no, it's absolutely fantastic. So, yeah, feels like spring's here, which is much appreciated. So
It's creeping in slowly, which is really nice. It does mean we're sat here, we've got sort of the sun just about coming through the windows, and it's actually quite toasty in this sort of very echoey glass box that's one of the sort of meeting rooms at CCWHQ. But we'll kick off the podcast as we usually do, and with complete optimism that maybe things have changed and our classics catch up. Has anything happened?
well, I'm a week further along with a week less to get something done. So, yeah, yes, I it's kind of now or never sort of territory. So I have got a shopping list. I know what I need to order. I've not ordered it yet. I need to get my mate on the phone so I can borrow his engine crane. So he's probably going to need to trail all that down to me. But yeah, I think more crucially, I need to find the space in the garage for the engine to sit. Because at the moment, I had a load of books that were booted out of storage that my mum and dad were kind of very kindly looking after. So the gap that was going to be where the engine would go is now full of piles of books. So I need to move those out of the way to make space. So yeah, it's probably the first job. Let's go with that. By the time this time next week, those boxes have moved and the space is back, and I can actually make a start. So.
Yeah, sort of just trying to find...
I mean, for those who have no idea what I'm talking about, I need to replace the engine seals on my A-Series engine in my Mini because it is leaking like a sieve. And I just about hobbled through the end of last year's season with it not being too much of an issue. But now it is an issue that needs sorting if I'm going to put any sort of great mileage on it. There is also the suspension that needs a look at as well. I need to get a hydroelastic. Is it? My brain's completely blank. It's not dry cone suspension on my Mini, so I need to get the.
Is it? I can't remember what that series of Mini runs. You've completely thrown me as well. Is it hydroelastic?
It is hydroelastic.
Yeah.
You know when it's the right answer, it sounds wrong.
Yeah.
So, either way, I need a specialist to look at the dampers because they are not right. They need regassing and they need reattention sort of thing. So, and if I'm serious about having it ready for sort of, drive it day, which is generally the point that we all sort of aim for having our cars fighting fit and ready for the rest of summer, then I'm rapidly running out of time. In fact, we're getting to the point now. It's just over 2 months. So yeah.
I'm similar. I haven't done anything with either of my classics for a while. I ran the midget probably when we did a park run. I think that was the last time it went out, and that's about it. It was parked then in the garage and hasn't been out since. Mind you, the weather has been pretty abysmal. This is like the first dry spell we've had for some time, so the MG might return this weekend. I've got nothing on, so I might actually go to something with it. There's a meet down in London I might try and head to. But no, I'm also waiting to do suspension work, and I keep sort of writing about it in the little nibs who run down the side of the Our Classics pages. I messaged my friend earlier sort of today, trying to find out sort of what time we've got, and essentially we figured out between now and the end of June, we have maybe 3 or 4 weekends that might work. So we've decided to scrap the idea of trying to do it at a weekend, and we've realised that my workshop is right next to a Chinese takeaway.
Well, that's useful.
What we've figured is we might as well just essentially, as soon as we both finish work, get to the workshop as soon as possible and just work for sort of 4 or 5 hours of an evening, fueled entirely by prawn crackers and special fried rice. And see if we can completely strip down the front and rear suspension on the car and completely rebuild and overhaul it. So hopefully going to go for sort of new swivels and trunnions at the front, because one side is very noticeably worn. And every now and then, if you park it on a loose surface, the midget achieves what I can only describe as a bit of a Lightning McQueen. It's sort of got a bit of a ka-chow going on where one wheel doesn't quite sit square to the rest of the car.
Right.
Where clearly we've got a worn sort of kingpin at the top.
Well, that's not going to help tyre health, is it?
No, not at all. So the plan is we're going to try and sort of essentially strip down both sides of the front end and rebuild those. I'll probably get hold of some reconditioned bits. I need to get in touch with my friend at Moss to try and get hold of the parts for that, and get some sort of agreeable prices, and then make progress from there. So essentially track down all the parts. Interestingly, the picture that's on the screen, if you're watching on the YouTube, is from Race Retro. While I was there, I did my usual trick of going around all the sort of trade stands and trying to find people that I could get things for free from.
Once you completed your show report, of course.
Yeah, once all of my work for Classic Car Weekly is out of the way, I then start blagging things under the guise of it being for Classic Car Weekly. And this has involved finding someone who does reconditioned and uprated valves for lever arm dampers, because of course the MG runs lever arms front and rear, and the best way to sort of improve the handling feel, tighten up a little bit, is improve or uprate the valve that sits within it. And they do an adjustable one. So essentially you have a small sort of socket bit that you can sit on top of the ratchet on the lever arm damper itself body and essentially tighten it up or slacken it off to
based on
change the pressure inside it. Yeah, which is going to be quite nice actually to be able to sort of tighten up the front end if I want to do something a bit more handling-y, if I try and get it to a track day or something this year. But equally, if I just want to sort of use it for touring, as I often do, just sort of slap back it off a little bit, really sort of let it sort of sink and settle a bit more. And equally, my mate who's going to be helping me has got some slightly lowered springs from one of his Austin A30, 35 projects, which we should be able to fit into the sort of seats at the front as well to try and bring the front end down. And at the back, we'll just give it a good going over, plus bushes and anti-roll bars as well, just to try and tighten it up. So that project is finally heading in the right direction. We've picked out roughly a week. He needs to check his calendar just to check that week works, but it works for me as well. And it's that final week in the build-up to Easter. So we've sort of got nothing else on in theory that week. We should be able to get it in, sorted, done in the course of about 4 evenings, which should be good.
Yeah.
So, finally the MG is heading in the right direction, which is good. But otherwise, it hasn't actually been anywhere. It's just sort of done a lot of theoretical stuff at the moment, just much like yours, awaiting things to happen.
Yeah.
But thankfully, mine isn't dripping oil onto the garage floor.
Well, it's dropping into a drip tray, so
that's all right.
there is that.
Is it an actual drip tray, or is it just a sort of tinfoil baking sheet?
No, actual drip tray. Ooh. So purchased while I was at Vista Heritage for one of the scrambles a while back. I can't remember when. But yeah, it's almost as if it's been doing this for a while and I've had something to deal with it and to make the problem sort of go away. But yeah, I really need to crack on now.
It's one of those things that a leaky engine is annoying. Like I used to be able to, I was not allowed to park the MG on the drive at home. Parents have got a lovely nice resin drive. It's a very sort of light sand colour.
Yep.
So any oil dropped onto it immediately shows up. So the MG, for a long while, until I rebuilt the engine, was not allowed to be there.
Ambition and preference versus practicality. I've not done any engine work on any classic car. I've done pretty much everything else, barring bodywork and painting. I've done some of the things that you've described, like replacing dampers, replacing springs, things like that. Enjoyed it immensely. I want to do this, but I think it is just the reality of work and life that means that I keep on putting it back. There's always a home project that's sort of putting me off or things like that. So I've not got the excuse of the garage being cold because one, it's it's integrated into the house and it's tiny anyway. So I could literally put the smallest of small space heaters in there and be nice and toasty. It is just finding the time to do it, sort of thing. I think it's one of those where I just need to do it. But the issue I have there is I don't want to be one of those people that goes ham-fisted into it, takes out the engine with no mind as to where the bits are, where the bits go and things like that. And then suddenly I find myself in maybe 3 months' time short of a part that means that I can't put the engine back in or something daft like that. So, yeah, I think I just need to find some time to do some reading as well. I've got the Haynes manual. I think I just need to do that as well, sort of thing. But, yeah. Once I put the kids to bed, all I want to do is veg out in front of the telly. So finding the enthusiasm to do that is quite difficult. So
yeah, I can agree with you on the time aspect. I obviously don't really have a family or children to try and sort of maintain and run, but it still took me the best part of 6 to 8 months to build an engine for the MG last summer. So yeah, I appreciate
I'm not even building an engine.
Just pulling it out and doing some seals.
I mean, I say that. Let's face it. I will find something, and that will. But as it stands, all I'm doing is replacing some seals. So. Yeah, I think it's one of those whereby I'm naive enough that if something is wrong, I'm not going to pick up on it. So it'll be a problem for later. So
that's a problem for future, Chris.
Exactly.
Whether or not it becomes a more significant problem, yet to be determined. But yeah,
it's an A series. It's how much can go wrong.
Yeah,
so.
It's got 14 moving parts. I mean, we'll see. But no, it's interesting times, and obviously spring is on the horizon. The show scene is starting back up. It's got that enthusiasm to sort of summer is on its way. And I did put together a little video for the CCW TikTok feed, just sort of compiling some bits from summer shows last night. And I was like looking back through sort of videos and bits. I was like, oh, I'm actually looking forward to this summer. There's some interesting bits planned in.
I mentioned last podcast how classic cars on the roads have been sort of conspicuous by their absence. How I've sort of really noticed that I've not spotted anything, sort of thing. So I don't know whether it's after making that comment I've been looking harder, but I have sort of seen cars out and about now. I saw an E-Type Roadster, a Series 1 in typical red, drive by outside my house, sort of thing. So there's various others in and around town that I've seen as well, sort of thing, finally coming out. There was a lovely R107 Merc that went by as well, sort of thing. And I don't know, maybe it is I'm just looking for these cars now, but you hear them before you see them, sort of thing. So yeah, the head immediately turns, sort of thing, or I look up from my laptop to see what's going to go by the window, sort of thing. But yes, it's finally happening. I am starting to see some older cars, sort of thing. So in fact, I think it was only yesterday that there was an Austin 7 that sort of rumbled by on my way back from meeting a friend. So yeah, it's happening. Yeah. It's finally happening.
Yeah, much like sort of the first snowdrops of spring, sort of seeing the first classic car of the season out on the road is sort of a heartwarming moment, and you sort of go, oh, here we go, it's go time, and it's really exciting. But yeah, speaking of show scene, obviously Race Retro, I was out over the weekend, the third weekend out in a row. Clearly I need to get a slightly more interesting social life. But no, Race Retro is one of my favourite events of the year, because it somehow combines sort of the brilliance of a sort of show with sort of displays and stands and clubs and a lot of familiar faces, a live stage, all the demonstrations that you expect to see from that, with a live rally stage as well. So it's sort of got this great sort of two-faced personality. And it was an absolutely brilliant event this year, actually. There were some great displays inside, and the rally stage sort of put out its usual sort of spread of curveballs and interesting classic cars on display. But
the rally stage is fantastic in its odd nature, because it's Stoneleigh, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the stage just takes place, even if you don't know the showground especially well, on just a series of access roads that are maybe sort of concrete and maybe a car width in width, sort of thing. So it's just really it's a really strange sort of course and layout that they follow, sort of thing. And then you just obviously got like the random hay bales and things like that as well to create makeshift chicanes and things like that. It looks challenging. It's not like it's, something that's straightforward to do. I think there's probably sort of a bit of a badge of honor for these people who take part to say that I've done Race Retro, sort of thing. So you always get some fantastic photography. The way that the course is laid out, they create the roll angles for that drama, even if in reality perhaps the speed that's implied by the photos is not what is there in reality. It still makes for a heck of a spectacle.
There are some great moments you can, because this year they started changing up the stage between morning and afternoon sessions across the Saturday and the Sunday. So essentially you had 4 different stages that were woven, like I said, around these access roads. They've sort of got slightly sort of high curbed stones around the edges, and most of the turns to it are 90 degrees. So every time you get to a turn, it's either a rip of the handbrake or a sort of stab of the throttle to get the car to rotate. So you do get to see cars properly sliding around, but it's narrow, it's tight, it forces drivers to really be quite conservative with how they do it. And it is mostly tarmac apart from a couple of link sections where it just cuts through the grass. There are some bits where there's sort of a significant kick or a bump and you do get a little bit of air. I've definitely got a shot somewhere in the collection from the weekend that's a Mini Cooper sort of just skipping off of the jump. It was sort of one of the first classics to go out in the afternoon run, and we're all sort of standing there sort of watching cars sort of going along. We see them sort of bounce a little bit and we think, we need something that's fast and lightweight, just enough to sort of skip off of that. And then eventually we were sort of waiting to see which of the Mini drivers was going to be the first one to just keep their foot planted for that section. And you just got this little shot where it's just 4 clearly off the floor and you're like, oh, there we go.
You can feel obviously getting the photography is difficult. It's a challenge, it's a skill, sort of thing. But when I've covered it in the past, I always just have this sort of enduring sort of feeling of, you hear this sort of like buzz in the distance, sort of thing, and the anticipation builds and it gets louder and louder, and then it hooves into view as like a speck, and then it gets bigger and bigger, and it's like, right, okay, no, now it's time to take the ideal photo sort of thing. So,
it's exciting in that way. Especially the minis are great because a lot of the cars you get very quick at sort of being able to pick up which ones they are by ear. The Sports all sound roughly about the same. The Vauxhall Forenza, the one that's actually pictured there, is badged as a Chevrolet with a 302 in it. Giant V8, absolutely thumping its way around. The same with the TR7 V8 that was sort of thumping its way around. And then you had a Ferrari 308 GTB. I think it would have been a Group 4 spec, so not the fiberglass one. And then on top of that, still you had a long wheelbase Audi Quattro, which sounds great. You've got the 5-cylinder Howland, you've got the turbocharger, sort of properly sort of dumping off to atmospheric pressure. You get that huge whoosh. And then there was a short wheelbase Quattro. And this thing was turned up to 11.
Right.
Clearly someone had just taken the boost regulator and just sort of turned it all the way around and went... People want to hear it make funny noises. And you could hear, if you were stood on the far side of the stage, a couple of 100 meters away from the start, you could hear as it set off. You just heard this sort of whip crack and then sort of cannon fire just as it sort of launched down the first 150 meters straight. And then it would lift and you'd hear this sort of barrage of artillery as it sort of popped, banged, and then set off again. And sort of this industrial sound of just sort of compressed air and explosions. And it just sort of repeated that for sort of several laps, absolutely hammering its way around. And you get excited by just the noise of it. And it's so brilliant because you see all these cars out on the stage doing what they're supposed to do, rallying and sort of taking to the edge of performance. Is really great. And then you go inside and you can get up close to sort of display editions of the cars and sort of speak to people who own the cars and run them and enjoy them in a different way. And you can experience the cars in sort of two ways, both sort of static and up close, and look at the detail of them, the engineering, and also see what they're supposed to do when they're sort of unleashed. It's really good fun.
It's not like a Goodwood revival where you see these cars worked on throughout the weekend sort of thing. I think a lot of the times they're going to be sort of static exhibits, but there's still the opportunity to sort of chat to the owners and things like that sort of thing.
You can still sort of pot around the paddock and sort of have a look at the cars up close that are being run on the stage, but equally inside in the show there's a lot of display cars as well.
And it's worth pointing out it's not a rally show, it is a motorsport show.
It's a motorsport show, yeah. There was a great blend of cars. I think the best example of this is the Martini livery display that was sort of one of the major displays in the event this year, which was essentially celebrating the iconic Martini livery, the sort of red, white and blue striping that covered everything from sort of Le Mans endurance racing cars all the way through to rally cars and road sports cars and touring cars. And there was an incredible array of cars that sort of made up this display, from a Lancia LC2 that would have been the 1986 iteration of the car. So it would have been the LC2B, I think it was the designation for it, all the way through to a Jaguar XJ220 that had been run by Don Law Racing. And obviously on top of that you've got Lancia Delta Integrales, a Stratos and 037, all of them resplendent in the iconic Martini livery. And then sort of backed into it at the back of that sort of crowd, you had this sort of continuation of the idea of I think it was booze and tobacco sponsorships. So we had a McLaren MP4 2B run by Alain Prost wearing the Marlboro livery. We had the Lotus E20, which was Kimi Raikkonen's car from, I want to say, 2012, and that ran, while it didn't run the JPS livery, it is that gold and black sort of evocation livery. And it's again that thing of, you can be sort of within 10 meters of a works Lancia, and then you have behind you Alain Prost's Formula One car, and then sort of beyond that you've got an X-Works Sunbeam Talbot and all sorts, and you just sort of keep sort of stumbling around and finding different historic racing vehicles. Even found a go-kart that had been competed in by the guy who built its son in 1975, and then in 1976 he returned to the championship to win it again, beating none other than Nigel Mansell to the title. So it's a really impressive car in that, and the fact that it's got this history to it. And I think last year Nigel Mansell's Formula Ford was at the event, so it's sort of great that there's this sort of, you bump into all these cars that have got these links and ties to so many incredible points in motorsport history. And you're like, I can't believe these are just sort of turning up out of the woodwork. And the more that you look, the closer you find it. And including Brooklands Museum were there with a lovely display of 3 cars. And 2 of them were cars from the very first British Grand Prix, which was held 1926 at Brooklands.
Brooklands, yeah.
And one of them was the winner. And you're sort of going, that's That's
Yeah, it's
100-year-old
museum
race.
exhibits,
Yeah.
isn't it, sort of
It's
thing?
museum
So museum exhibits out in the wild. So
Yeah, but when else are you going to get a chance to get
You
up
know.
that close to the car? Obviously, at Brooklands, it's going to be sort of in its preservation state. That it's going to be looked after. It is awaiting restoration. It's currently without an engine after it blew it at Goodwood Festival of Speed a few years ago. But when else are you going to get up close to these sort of intriguing and fantastic elements of history? And then on the live stage, you've got incredible people from the world of motorsports, from rally drivers to sort of track racing like drivers. I think Alex Brundle was there. Tom Ingram, the current British touring car champion, was on stage at one point as well. And you just sort of mill around and just sort of there's this just great spread of really interesting cars, including the RS 1700T, which is a bit interesting for
It's that sort of grassroots feel with genuine sort of historical relevance and almost like a celebrity factor as well, sort of thing. So you feel like you're in a clique. You feel like you're part of a club, sort of thing. So you wouldn't get this access in normal, everyday sort of conditions, sort of thing. So
yeah, it's a really interesting show and a really enjoyable one to get along to. Even if
you make it into the auctions?
I did have a poke around the auction quickly. There were some interesting bits and pieces floating around. Iconic with a huge sort of lineup of cars. This was their first time auctioning bikes at Race Retro as well.
Okay,
and,
in addition to competition cars and then regular collectors' cars, yeah.
And a huge sort of stack of automobilia and stuff like that. So they've had a huge sort of sale going on. Obviously, I think the headline sales from that were Richard Hammond's MGB and his daughter's Mini. I haven't seen what they went for, but I know that Richard was there at least on the Saturday filming bits and pieces. He was there with his TV production company, so that'll be something you'll see in, I assume, Series 6.
Well, there was
smallest
the Capri that comes from the family of Jack Sears as well.
So inaugural British touring car champion. I'd be interested to see how that did as well. So,
but we could probably look that up now. The podcast that does its research live on air. Past auction results. Let's see. Iconic sale at Race Retro. Would that have been in the competition cars, the Capri?
No, it's a regular.
Was that in the regular one? Let's see. Here we go. And if we search for Capri, what comes up? And I've only got two results showing for Capri. Which one was it? The 72 or the 79? Here we go. 72. Mark 1 3000E. Buy it now for 27,900. Did not sell.
Oh, okay.
So that's still available, which is interesting. And equally, the Mark III 3-litre S, however, the 79 car, did sell for £28,687, including its premium, which is really interesting. And it was Hammond's MGB, wasn't it, that was up for sale? Let's see. Nothing there. It was MG. It was... Ooh. No, that was under competition car, wasn't it? Competition cars. MG and Richard Hammond's MG sold.
This is the BGT, yeah.
This is the BGT. So the last car he drove on Top Gear when they did the sort of celebration of classic cars and sort of leaning into the classic car world, and then he later restored it on the smallest cog and has used it for racing since. 1972 MGB GT race car offered directly from Richard Hammond, sold for $16,875.
Okay,
which is not as much as I think a lot of people anticipated it going for. 69 MGC GT rally car sold for $12,375, and a B Roadster hardtop.
You say that, but the celebrity provenance is at least double the value of that car.
A FIA spec MGB Roadster 64 sold for $33,000, so just over double. So interesting that that's what it fetched. It really depends on sort of what you can race that car in. Another FIA spec MGB Roadster 32, and yeah, you look at what sort of other cars of a similar ilk have gone for. I think there's something interesting said, sort of how far does celebrity provenance get a classic car when it goes to auction. I think it really depends on the celebrity. Rickwood engine as well, and it's been modelled by Corgi, so it's a car that's got sort of good track record. And a Rickwood engine, Rickwood do a lot of historic motorsport preparations. Their workshop is incredible. I would love to have a poke around it one of these days. In fact, I think someone did offer me a chance for that, so I should probably follow it up. But no, it's a great car, but I think it's there's probably something to be said about how the auction scene respects cars like that with that sort of a history. But anyway, that's getting sidetracked. No, brilliant show.
Good.
Really well enjoyed and well worth going to. I think for 2027 it should be back. I think importantly as well, it's sort of treading on the toes of what was once the Autosport show as well, because that used to be January at the NEC. That used to be this greater celebration of sort of motorsports. both modern and classic.
Yep.
But that fell through this year. And I think we saw this sort of great influx of people sort of turning up to Race Retro just to get a sort of motorsports feel, and have now been introduced to the world of classic cars. So there's this sort of added benefit.
My recollection of that show, and it's been a number of years since I've been, was one. There's almost like a B2B element to that show. It was very much aimed at companies talking to other companies and where people went to do business sort of thing. So there of course was like a public element to it, but there was large swathes of that show which is just a bit of an irrelevant sort of thing. So and the other one aspect of that show, it did go a bit lowbrow. It was one of those shows where when I'm being unkind, but just it was a little bit max power towards the end sort of thing, which has now come back into fashion, ironically. But it was just a bit too in that direction rather than Race Retro, which is very much sort of, here's what you can go and buy the bits to get your car ready for whatever aspect of motorsport you want, be that hill climbing, be that track days, be that something more full on.
Yeah, there is a business aspect to Race Retro. You can go along. I think a lot of people use it as a way to kickstart their racing season if they're going into 2026 looking to do a classic racing series, if they're looking to get into hill climb. It's a great way of sort of finding the club to do it with as well.
There's exhibitors that show you what you can do with cars and things like that as well. So it's you can theoretically buy a car there, not a dealer car sort of thing, but I know from previous that there are exhibitors there that show off what they can do with an MX-5 chassis, for example. So
there's a lot of different ways you can approach Race Retro and get a lot of different things from it. I think is the important sort of the takeaway from it is you can get as much from it as you take to it, as it were, and the more you put into it, the more you get from it as a show. If you really sort of go for it and tour around all the stalls, if you're looking to get into motorsport, it's naturally going to be a more interesting show. If you're just going along looking to see some classic cars, it has plenty to offer on that side of things as well, because there is the display hall, there is all the show stands, there is the sort of the live stage with people talking about things. And I think it's a show that, I think this was the 20th running of it as well. I think it's a show that sort of really now found its form, found its footing, and knows that it can communicate to both classic fans and to sort of motorsports businesses and heritage motorsport business.
All the more so because it's a show that had to re-establish itself after being away for a year due to the severe floodings. Was it 3 years ago? That saw the site completely underwater and it had
was
to go.
Was that 2 years ago? Because last year, 2025,
it's definitely,
I remember covering it. It might have been 2024.
Yeah.
Because we had road tested the Mitsubishi Evo and a Subaru Impreza that the auction for never went ahead because
I think that's 2023. I think it could be.
No.
Who knows?
It was
Is it worth checking?
It was 2024 because I remember 2023 was the first year I remember covering it. And then I remember that it went away for a year, and then last year I remember covering it again, and remember putting together the coverage for that. So I'm certain it was 2024 it would have been flooded out.
I think you're right, actually. I just think I'm stuck in 2025.
What's the Google saying?
That's what I'm just trying to find out. When was... Yes, you're right. 2024.
But no.
Returning in 2025. I knew there'd been at least one since.
Yeah.
So.
Because it would have just about missed COVID in 2020 as well. It would have been one of the last events that would have gotten the go-ahead before sort of March, April, everything went a bit wonky. So it would have been sort of... It's had that sort of great run, and then all of a sudden 2024 was the year it missed. But no, it's well worth going to. I think it should be back for 2027. I don't think the dates for that have been announced just yet. So but once they are announced, you'll probably find out here in Classic Car Weekly.
Next big one to keep an eye on is obviously Resto Show.
Yeah.
So Practical Classics, Classic Car and Restoration Show at the NEC, 20th to the 22nd. I think we're all going to be there, aren't we? Most of the team.
Yeah, across the weekend, I think we're all going to be there in some capacity doing bits and pieces. And it's again one of those shows that I always look forward to because it's got so many additional elements to
exactly. It's not just an indoor show.
Yeah. And that's going to be a really interesting one. We haven't got a stand at it this year. We haven't got cars on display. But we'll certainly be there sort of heading around looking for your cars, your stories. So there's going to be a lot to cover. And certainly a lot to cover if you're Practical Classics. They've got 2 cars that are heading along to it. They've got the
Fiat 124?
Fiat 124, which they started on last year. And the Morris Minor police car.
Morris Minor?
Yeah, Morris Minor police car. The last of the Morris Minors to be converted to police use.
Panda spec.
And I've seen the pictures that Matt Tompkins has posted. And
I don't
work
know.
to do.
I don't know what endpoint they're aiming for, because if it's a completed running driving car, they've got a lot of work to do before the end of that show. Yeah.
I think Matt, in his usual sort of standard, will be quite busy in the run up to it, getting to a point where you can then get the job done inside of 3 days on stage. But yeah, that guy always runs at 11:10s, I think, is kind of the gist of it, isn't it? So it comes as no surprise.
Yeah, having sort of seen him and watched him do prep for things like the Palmer and the Resto Show before, he prepares very well, which means that he can take on these absolutely enormous tasks and pull them off remarkably. But it's just watching the incredible stress level build up. The show starts, at which point there's no going back, so it all sort of alleviates at that point, and then it gets to the end of Sunday, and he's just knackered. It's this incredible transformation, sort of like a reverse butterfly sort of effect. You want to put him in a chrysalis at the end just so he can sort of re-energize and rebuild himself.
You can stop now.
Yeah. But no, it's looking like it's going to be a good show. We've got a lot of preview work coming in Classic Car Weekly.
Yes.
We've got some interesting drives coming up for that one as well, so that should be plenty to look out for. That's going to be the next big thing on the race, on the sort of the show scene. And then after that, no, it's Goodwood members meeting, and then we've got Drive-In Day. So sort of very quickly tumbles into sort of the later stage of spring and the arrival of
For
all
all
the
we've
big
been
shows.
wishing away winter, I think, it's going to be a bit of a blur for the next few months.
Yes, well, we usually say that it's going to be a blur for the next few months, and then we get to November and go, right, that's that sorted then. We sort of get to about halfway through November, the classic motor show's done, and we go, 2027, anyone? And it all starts again. This is sort of the edge of a very slippery slope.
Yeah.
But no, it's looking like a good year, and I think Race Retro is a great way to sort of kick off that element of the season. Elsewhere in this week's issue, I did have a note for this. Which is what do you mean?
Well, I work across multiple issues, mate. So yeah, just remind me what we're looking at.
Let's see. I will go to Studio. That will pull it up.
It's the issue on sale today.
Yes,
So
yes, the issue on
Wednesday,
sale today,
25th of March. February. Wishing away time again. Sorry.
Here we go. It's convenient. It's loaded up on the right spread. So obviously we've got coverage of Race Retro in there. We've got the BMW 6 Series at 50, which was sort of the dawning of the legendary coupe that sort of followed on from.
So that's a really sort of in-depth sort of history into how and why that car came about. I thoroughly recommend that as a read. Well researched. So yeah, you might sort of you definitely will pick up a thing or two that hopefully you weren't aware of. So.
Yeah, that's a really interesting story. On top of that, we've catch up with an Austin that's been on an epic trip. This is a 101-year-old Austin that has done 2,500 miles, which is going to be an incredible feat in and of itself. There is an update on the enthusiast call for car tax, essentially looking at the reduction of car taxation for cars that fall just outside of the sort of exemption all the way through to about 20 years old.
Yeah, that's a really interesting sort of balancing act between securing the future of these cars that, if we don't intervene, can potentially go extinct before we have the opportunity to preserve them, versus ensuring that the current sort of benefits and exemptions that we have in place aren't
impacted,
scrutinized and potentially revised as a result, sort of thing. So I absolutely see both sides of the story, sort of thing. So have a look and see what sort of side you fall on. And obviously there's full details of the petition there if you want to take a look at it and you feel you want to put your signature on it.
Because I think the government have sort of cottoned onto it early. It's not reached its official threshold yet. The government has sort of cottoned onto it and gone, no. But obviously, if it reaches that threshold, it will then have to reach proper levels of discussion. It will have to be put to panels and experts and so on and so forth and be properly discussed. So there is still chance for this to be properly investigated, but it's one of those interesting balancing points that I think needs to be sort of looked at. Essentially, preservation of the Festival of the Unexceptional generation of cars.
It goes into that conversation we were having in the podcast last week, which is, when does a second-hand car become a classic? So you can well see a situation where if cars in that 30 to 40 year bracket enjoy reduced taxation, that people could use it as an opportunity to run an old car as a cheap car rather than
what we intend to do with it, which is to
Preservation status.
Take these cars to show, that money saving being used on the upkeep of keeping it in stupendous condition so that it can be passed on to future generations, sort of thing. As I say, it's a massive balancing act, and I can well see how it could be open to abuse and how that abuse could potentially impact the rest of us. But likewise, I fully see the point of the petition. Something does need to be done so that we're not getting 10 years down the line and wondering where all the K10 micros went. So
there's 10 years down the line, Festival of the Unacceptable won't be able to happen because all of those cars will have sort of vanished through no want for preservation or no reasonable means of preservation. Elsewhere in the issue, we've also got a buying guide for the Bentley Continental. This is the 1990s iteration of the car, that sort of lovely square-bodied look with the sort of quad lamps at the front. A really
big brute that is affordable, but you need to go into it eyes open, especially with regards to maintenance costs, sort of thing. And we dip into what you can do, what you should do, what to look for in the history if you are going to buy, because at the amount of car that you're getting for the money, it's very tempting. But maybe one of those cars that you treat almost like a bucket list, that you're not going to treat, especially as a long-term prospect, that you can just try, have a go, and then maybe look to move on in a year or two. We kind of focus on how you can do that sort of thing, because again, a car of that size with that much power, there's certain things that you need to think about before you go into it.
How you can best own a Bentley Continental.
It's as much about the ownership as it is about the buying with this particular buying guide.
It's an interesting one. I think it's one of those that interesting sort of tipping point as cars became sort of very modern, very complex. It's sort of the start of that point where you go, how reasonable is this for DIY maintenance? And sort of, if you look at other cars from that time period, I mean, my Jimny's a great example. It's very basic. There isn't a great deal of sort of electronic componentry to it to go wrong. It's easy to fix on the driveway at home. But you look at luxury cars where you started having all the mod cons really start to creep in, and the sort of tech of them, it was trickier to maintain those. And I think the Mercedes S-Class is another great example. What you see on today's Mercedes S-Class will appear on the regular road-going cars in about 5 to 8 years' time. And we sort of saw that with like adaptive cruise control and all sorts that arrived on the cars in the 80s, 90s. Nowadays, that's just sort of modern on a Mazda hatchback. So the Bentley is a really interesting sort of tide marker for that one as well. And the way we were heads to Glasgow in 1977, Argyle Street. And there are some really interesting cars scattered around this one as well, so well worth picking up and poring over the imagery from that one. Lose Yourself in 1977, of course. There's some brilliant cars included in that as well. So that's all we've got time for on this week's episode of the Classic Car Weekly podcast. We will be back next week with another edition. I can't remember what we're all up to next week.
Well, hopefully we're going to be joined by our colleagues in Media House.
Yeah, they're far more scattered to the four corners of the UK than we are, so this is sort of more of a convenience for us. But no, we'll be back next week with another edition of the podcast and, of course, another issue of Classic Car Weekly. Chris, thank you very much for joining me this week.
Thank you very much.
And we'll be back soon.